This is the Collaboration Dynamics Podcast, helping you work together better with Judy Reese, X-Ray listener, best-selling author, international virtual collaboration trainer, and master of metaphor. Hear more at xraylistening.com.
Hello and welcome to the Collaboration Dynamics Podcast. With me today, I've got Colin Smith. Hello, Colin. How are you doing?
Hello, Judy. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Would you like to introduce yourself and what you do in relation to collaboration?
The role I have these days is as the listener. And the idea of the listener is it helps people to be heard and to think more deeply. It also enables them to recognize that they don't listen very well and come to me to learn to listen better. And
listening being a pretty important piece of collaboration.
Very much so. And I think it's one of those that's often expected that people understand how to listen, because it's something that we do actually more than any other communication method, yet it's the one that's least trained. So people think they're listening, in fact they're not, they're just hearing. So for collaboration perspective, I think it's vital that individuals learn how to listen properly. Things like pay attention, eye contact, not interrupting, and therefore giving the person who's speaking the real opportunity to speak properly from their true self.
Mm-hmm. And when that's what you do as the listener, what's been your experience of collaboration?
I think that when you get into a space, let's say it's a small team that are working together on a project, then the results that come out from it are often, let's say the original meetings take a little bit longer because you're giving everyone the chance to speak and to be heard, and to often go into moments or periods of silence where they're thinking, but they know they're not being interrupted. But the output is, the quality of the output is much higher because everyone is actually really now listening to what is being said. And original thinking comes through because they've got the opportunity to do so. So the results actually are better in the longer term, whilst at the beginning the meetings can take longer. What it also does is it engenders a much closer relationship, be this in a team or even working, when you're with your partner or children. You build up a very different relationship with them because it's deeper. It shows you care, and it also, for them, they feel valued and they matter.
Mm-hmm. And when you are collaborating at your best, that's like what?
The best way I can describe it is it's like a mill pond. It's completely still and silent. And when if you're navigating across a still pond, it is effortless. It's just like it is true being. And that's the best way I could probably describe what it's like when you're truly in that space of collaborating and, in my role, listening to the other person.
And like a mill pond, completely still and silent. Is there anything else about that mill pond?
I would also say it would be very clear, if I'm sort of conjuring up this image in my mind. It's a clear blue sky, little or any breeze, and just so it becomes almost in listening properly. It's like meditation. That if you can really focus on the person that you're listening to, and almost focus on your breath as well, enables you to really be present with that person. And so you're looking or hearing with your eyes, you're also hearing with your ears, and also hearing with your heart. So you're hearing the whole of that person.
And it's like a mill pond, that image in your mind, a still, silent mill pond, and clear blue sky and little or no breeze. And it's like a meditation. And that mill pond, and when you're navigating across that mill pond, it's effortless. What kind of navigating is that navigating, when you're navigating across that mill pond?
It feels as though you are at one with the person speaking. Mm-hmm. So the navigation is coming from them. Mm-hmm. So that's where, for me, the elements of listening, such as being interested and curious. So I'm being drawn across this mill pond by what I'm picking up from them. So it might be that as they're expressing something really deep, that you can feel yourself dropping deeper with them. If they move, you're able to move with them. You become at one with them, and that's why they actually find it really opening. It enables them to open up more for them.
And you're being drawn across the mill pond, and when they go deeper, you go deeper too. Is that deeper in the mill pond?
I suppose the deeper in this context is it kind of changes it slightly. It's not that I would sort of go deeper into the water, but you feel more drawn towards something through the navigation. So when they go deeper, you connect deeper as well. Mm-hmm. So you're drawn in a slightly odd in that you're on a mill pond and you're not going under the water, but you're more drawn. So let's say the strength of the pull is stronger.
Mm-hmm. So the strength of the pull is stronger. And is there anything else about that pull?
Is there anything else about the pull? It feels strong. It feels assured. It feels all-encompassing. Mm-hmm. It's complete. So when they go to a deep place, you know it's a deep place. It feels like a deep place. Mm-hmm. So you're feeling it, and they're feeling it.
Mm-hmm. And whereabouts are you feeling it?
I feel it in my gut, really. Mm-hmm. It's sort of in the, you almost embody that connection. You do it unconsciously, I suppose, or subconsciously. Mm-hmm. And it's that, I suppose it's that enables you then to really feel, so it creates a level of empathy, because they're feeling that you're feeling it. And so empathy is an important part in that.
Mm-hmm. So they feel you're feeling it, and you're feeling it in your gut. Whereabouts are they feeling it?
I guess they're more likely to feel it in a similar place, be it heart, your gut, or something like that, rather than a head. Mm-hmm. My feeling is that this is not a head-to-head conversation. Mm-hmm. This is a heart-to-heart or even gut-to-gut conversation, which is where the brain is sort of relaxed and says, hey, I don't need to fight, I don't need to stress. I can just be in this place with this other person. So part of what I'm doing is holding that space for them to be themselves, to drop into their heart, and then actually to share what is coming from that space. Mm-hmm. What I find is that more often than not, people share things and they go, I had no idea I was going to say that. Mm-hmm. Or in some cases, I had no idea I knew that or was thinking that.
And when you're drawn across the mill pond like that, then what happens?
What happens? For me, time almost stops. Mm-hmm. So it becomes a timeless experience. If I'm having this conversation, say in a coffee shop, you suddenly, as you come out of it, when you sort of finish the conversation or is the break in the conversation, you're suddenly aware that there's a lot more people in the restaurant or the coffee shop, or there's fewer than it was before, or you become aware of the noise again. So it is like the best way to describe it is like a very deep meditation when you're truly listening to another person and they've gone deeper and you've gone deeper with them.
Mm-hmm. And then what happens to the mill pond?
It's lovely.
Then what happens to the mill pond?
At what point?
When you come out of the conversation and you start to notice, what happens to the mill pond?
I suppose then you get a sense you're back on it again, but actually you're just sitting in your boat or whatever it is you're sitting in. Mm-hmm. and suddenly you're aware of everything around you. So when you're in the conversation, you become less and less aware of that you're even in the mill pond, or even on the mill pond. As you come out of it, you become, this is where I am. So you're back in the room again, or back on the mill pond again.
So that's what happens at the end of the conversation. What happens at the beginning of the conversation?
What happens at the beginning of the conversation is there is a meeting of the two of you. It's a calm place. It's an easy place, and I think it's through attention, and attention seems to be at the heart of what I do. Is they become aware that actually it's very calming. They feel connected. They feel that this person, the person in front of them, is interested in them. They appear not to be having judgment about them, and maybe simple questions such as what's present for you today, or is there anything you'd like to talk about or think about or share, and something like that enables them to just start to speak. So it is that calmness, it is that attention that I think is really important in that early part of the conversation. After that, once they get into it, they're able to just talk. And sometimes I describe when they go away to think. What I mean by that is that whilst I'm looking at them and looking at their eyes or their head will turn somewhere else to enable them to think. But when they return to their position, they'll notice that my eyes are still on them. So whenever they look back at me, my eyes are still on them. And that to them is really reassuring. It means that there's no interruption in their train of thought, in what they're saying. And also when they've gone away to think or they're silent, I'm not seeking to jump in and interrupt. And again, that's reassuring and doesn't stop the flow of their thinking. And so, yeah.
What happens to the mill pond in that early part of the process?
I would say the mill pond is the mill pond. It's a sensation that you're sitting on the mill pond. It's calm, it's peaceful. But as the conversation, as you connect more and more deeply with that person, you're just left with an awareness of it. You're not necessarily seeing it anymore. It's just an awareness to the side of you or around you, rather than you're seeing it. Because the moment you start seeing it, you've almost come out of the conversation, because the attention is then suddenly back on the mill pond rather than on the person. Yeah.
Is there anything else about all of that and how that works?
There's nothing else that comes to mind if I sit with that space. What I do know is that it's an enjoyable place to be from my perspective, and certainly from the people that have been on the other side of it. They find it very calming, very engaging and very relaxing. And also there's an increase in the level of connection between the two people. I've certainly found that with people I speak to, and also when they've had the opportunity to do it with others. And sometimes even in those first, 20, 30 seconds where you're just looking at each other in complete silence. There's an amazing amount of sort of connection to, just two people meeting on a mill pond. What a lovely way of thinking about it.
So two people meeting on a mill pond and just looking at each other for 20 or 30 seconds, and then connection, and then a deepening and drawing across the mill pond. Yeah.
So it could be that, as I'm thinking about this, it could be that you're aware of them, and they're all quite a way away. but you can, and it's kind of a bit of a paradox, really, in they're so far away you can just see the boat, but actually you can see their eyes close up. But as they get closer and closer, you become more and more aware of them, and less and less of the mill pond, until you're connected with them and they're connected with you. And it sounds awfully romantic, but it's a very deep and actually meaningful connection with, as I would describe it, a fellow human being. You're seeing past all of the other, let's say, the baggages that we all carry, and you see that pure human being in front of you, and that's who you're connecting with.
And that's
so
when
it's a human being to a human being.
And that's when you feel it in your gut. You embody that connection. It's that timeless meditative experience.
Yeah. And what's interesting is at times you don't know what they've said. It's difficult to recall because you're in the space with them. But they will. This is the weird part: is they will feel heard, even if you may not be able to remember all that they've said. And often then the responses that you make, the questions you say, the questions you ask, or the things you might say back to them, come from a different place. They're not coming from my head. Those responses, for me, feel like they're coming from my heart.
And when all that happens, what happens to collaboration?
I think what gets created from these sorts of connections is an increase in the level of trust, and therefore the quality of the relationship goes up, and therefore the degree of collaboration will also go up. Because the more you trust someone, the greater the collaboration. You're not seeking. It feels as though you're on the same side of the table, working on the same things, rather than sitting opposite each other in contention or in competition with them. So for sure, the more even if all a team did was actually to really pay full attention to each other, it would make, I believe, a significant impact on the quality of the project, be it in the amount of time it takes, the way they work together, etc., etc. It's so. I think it's such an opportunity that so few people are doing it. Tom Peters, the consultant or management consultant from the 70s, author of In Search of Excellence, he talks about it as being the number one strategic thing organizations should do, he says above strategic planning. He calls it strategic listening, and he said it's something that should apply to everyone in the organization.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And yes, there's a fascinating conversation to be had about the relationship between listening and strategic planning, but that's another for a conversation for another time. So when all of that, if people would like to contact you and find out more about you and what you do, how can they do that?
Best way would be to look at my website, which is dexteritysolutions.co.uk, and that's DEXTERITY solutions, that's all one word, .co.uk.
It's interviews like that remind me of why I'm doing this. Don't you love just looking inside somebody's mind and seeing how they do what they do really well? Colin is a brilliant listener, I know, because I've had lots of conversations with him. And now I know what's going on in his mind when he's doing it. Headlines included, well, the big headline was how that whole interview really demonstrated why I ask people about their metaphors. When you hear that metaphor of the mill pond and how it all works with the other person drawing Colin across the mill pond, and then it ends up like you're both on the same side of the table. And at the beginning you're aware of the mill pond and you can see it, and then later in the process all that fades away. Once you hear that metaphor, you have the ability to step into Colin's shoes if you choose to. The research shows that when people speak in metaphor, people find it much easier to, in inverted commas, mind read and understand what they mean, particularly in emotional content, than if they speak in highly conceptual terms. And that's fascinating to me. Once you know how to ask about people's metaphors, then it opens up a jewel box. So much to be curious about, to explore and to play with, and to try on if you choose to. So I better do some headlines that I got from that. Because Colin and I both do a lot of listening training, in inverted commas again, I'm using a lot of those quote marks today, because we agree on so many things. So he quotes that piece of Tom Peters that listening is the number one strategic thing that organisations should do. He mentioned that if all a team did to change their situation was to pay full attention to each other, it would make a significant difference. He mentioned that we do listening more than any other mode of communication, and yet we receive virtually no training in how to do it well. And that people think they're listening when in fact they're not. And when people listen, what is developed is relationship, trust in relationship, and relationships start to work in a much more elegant and beautiful way. And in next week's podcast, we'll be doing more exploring of metaphors, more finding out about how different people experience collaboration. Oh, have you noticed, if you've listened to the whole series of podcasts, so far we hadn't had a single team? Let's see what happens next week. See you then.